Should be good now? Okay. Donuts and coffee over there. Thanks to James for continuing to bring those great donuts up here. So we have that. And we have the member showcase a little bit later. We do have a couple of things in there. James, you brought something over there for people to look at after? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll get right into the division business here. So bringing up a thing about OPSIG. I don't know how many guys are into operations. There's a couple here that I definitely know are into operations. So there's a special interest group of the NMRA. It's called OPSIG. For those that aren't members of the group, and they have their focus is operations on model railroads. So they do have a website. It's opsig.org, and on that website, they recently started a new program in OPSIG, and it's an achievement program. So it's outside of what the NMRA achievement program is, but it allows you to get OPSIG recognition of operating all different types of operation, from yard master to dispatcher, the various different components. So basically, if you weren't a member, you could go in, you could sign up as a new member to OPSIG if you're interested in that. And then on the resources page, you'd go down to OPSIG Achievement Program, and it would bring you to this page. And these are all the different categories of what they recognize in OPSIG. So you have boomer, which would be somebody that's, follows a lot of different trains and different layouts, goes around to different layouts, dispatcher, yard master, host, author, they're all there. And basically what you do is you would apply to these, you would make out a application to these different programs. And for example, the dispatcher, if you demonstrate that you have competency in dispatching and you've requirements to show competency at least 3 different disciplines, direct traffic control, centralized traffic control, timetable and trade order, and warrants, you could apply to get the dispatcher recognition. And when you applied for the recognition, you basically would fill out an application like this. You put your name in, an email, your information, and then basically at the bottom, it just tells you to provide some kind of documentation. It would be something where you just write in, I was a dispatcher at the following layouts, the following dates, and this person's email for verification that you actually dispatched on that layout. And then you'd send that into OPSIG, and they would verify the information. So basically how it happened with me, I've already applied for a few for my layout, and basically what they do is they send you an email and they say, the following individuals have asked for verification of dispatching on your layout on these dates. And you just say, you verify that they actually did do the dispatching. And then what they'll do is they have these awards that they present to all those different categories, and you would get a certificate from OPSIG eventually, and then they have these small buttons that they provide. So it's sort of a neat program. Like I said, it's a little bit it's not into the NMRA achievement program. It's sort of a side part to that, but it's something neat, it's something neat that they're trying to do. So anybody that's into operations, I would strongly encourage you to take a look at it. They do have a video explaining it on that web page. If you went onto the web page, you click the video. It's like a 20-minute video explaining the program and what they're trying to accomplish. And I think OPSIG's focus is just trying to get more people involved in operations, prototypical operations of layouts. There it is right there, the mission statement: to increase the ability and knowledge of model railroads interested in operations. So it's just a sidebar to, physically modeling. I got into the hobby and really didn't know much about operations, met a few different people, and once I started operating it, I haven't turned back. I love operations now. It's a big part of why I follow the hobby. Okay, Steve, you want to come up? And Steve's going to come up, and he's going to give a presentation on something that he found. Let me get your slideshow for you.
If you remember from past meetings, Art's always badgering everybody to spend a few minutes and tell us what's on your workbench or what you've been doing. I figured I'd take him up on that challenge and show everybody very briefly. This is only going to take about 10 minutes or so, but something I became interested in. And if you recall my interest, I long time had a standard gauge, and that was a very low-level interest until I finally came out of the closet on standard gauge about 7 years ago, and so now I'm fully into that. And what happened just within the last month or so is a second episode of coming out, and this time it's on the Santa Fe war bonnets. I didn't realize that I had an interest, and all of a sudden there it was. So I'm out of the closet twice now on model train items. This is how it started for myself and a lot of you. You probably heard Lionel catalogs back in the olden days, and this one was instrumental because this is the first time in 1949 the Santa Fe units were offered. They came in Santa Fe and a rather innocuous gray New York Central at the same time. Well, everybody in my neighborhood, everybody that I knew had this layout set up in the early 50s. Everybody except for me. And as you may recall, my father was an engineer. There's no way in the world he was going to buy a train set that had 3 rails. So you know which one I ended up with. And I liked it a lot, but every time I saw the neighbors' kids or some acquaintances, they had Santa Fe war bonnets with Lionel, and somehow my American Flyer was just really puny in comparison. So now we go fast forward to the convention that just concluded a couple of weeks ago, NMRA convention in Novi, Michigan, Detroit suburb. And it was a great convention, and the one thing they had set up in the hotel conference room was a number of modular layouts. This one especially was very well done. It was just pretty much just a loop of tracks. I don't know which group set it up, but they appeared to have a lot of Santa Fe modelers, because every time I looked at it, they were running Santa Fe trains. When I saw this, I stopped in my tracks, because I hadn't really seen a model war bonnet on anybody's layout or anywhere for as long as I can remember. And all of a sudden, there it was. It was just unbelievable. I was really taken by it. Next day, I went back, and they were running units. They were running both with passenger trains that looked perfectly suitable, and also with freight trains, because the F units did pull freight trains on the Santa Fe. So after I came back from the vacation and the convention, I said, I got to dig a little bit deeper. And this, of course, opened up any kind of railroading Pandora's box, because there's a lot of info out there, and a lot of fantastic pictures. These Santa Fe diesels were just about always in really good condition until the very end. In the late 60s, some of the pictures show them looking a little bit shabby, but most of the time they were just incredibly beautiful. So I was checking on pictures, and here we have quite common when you have a longer train, 3 B units in between a couple of A units. Here's another Super Chief picture, the same motive power configuration. You can tell that this is Los Angeles. The haze is pretty bad, but nevertheless, it's a gorgeous picture. The Super Chief was really their premier train, and it ran. Let me just. Maybe this better to take a look. It was all Pullman, and it wasn't Pullman sections, you know, the old type of things that pulled down from the roof area. It was all rooms and roomettes like that, totally exclusive. It was an absolute premier train on the Santa Fe. They did come up with, at the same time, a lesser service, and it was called the El Capitan. It ran on the same schedule, pretty much 39 3/4 hours from Chicago to Los Angeles, but they had high-level cars. Not originally, but you can see at the end of the train they have the high-level cars, and this is all chair. There were no sleeping accommodations, so you had to sleep in a chair. But nevertheless, this train proved to be extremely popular, being less expensive. Ran on the same schedule, 39 3/4 hours, and people really liked it. These cars now. These were some of the first time that high-level cars had ever been used anywhere in the U.S. They're quite common now, especially in commuter service. But the people enjoyed the view. They said the ride was superior due to being up higher. Obviously, it was less noisy. People really liked these cars. So I said, okay, this looks good. What can we find out there in the marketplace? And there's not a lot of models that are currently available. The Walters units are fairly recent, and if you scrounge around, you can find some. I was able to find some. The Athearn units go back 10 to 15 years, and you can still find them on eBay, but it's rather sparse. When you do find them, both of these, they come either with DCC or DC. The problem with the Athearn units is that they come with Tsunami, but it's the original Tsunami, not the 2. And when you get an Athearn that's DC, I got fooled. One guy said it was DCC ready. Not even. It was straight DC. There's nothing inside of it at all. Nice units though. They both run very nicely. And I started to look around for the cars, and the cars were equally as difficult to find. And I did discover that Walters made complete sets of passenger cars. This one goes back 16 years ago. These were offered. And I probably looked at the advertisements 16 years ago and you know, saw the cost of it. I said, oh, okay, pass on that one. But anyway, these things were quite limited. Sometimes they made only 300 or 400 sets of cars. So Walters also made, this one only goes back, I think, 14 years now, when they made this set for the El Capitan, 8 cars. What happened on the prototype, when we got up into the 60s, the passenger trains were becoming less profitable. Santa Fe said, well, we're going to combine the Super Chief and the El Capitan into a single train. And that's actually what they did. The El Capitan portion of the train was up toward the front. The Super Chief portion was in the rear, and there was no commingling of passengers between the two parts of the train. So it was really 2 trains in one, but there was a lot of economy for the Santa Fe in doing that. This set now is 4 years old, and I was able to acquire one of these. I looked, and there was just one place. All of a sudden, must have squirreled them away because they had 4 sets. So that's what you would call a new old stock. So here's what that train looks like. This is more than what would be in the set that I have, quite a bit more. But this gives you an idea of what the combined train looks like. This ran from sometime in the early 60s, all the way up until Amtrak took over in 71. It's a pretty impressive train. You can see the El Capitan portion is all the high-level cars, and toward the end, the low-level cars. Again, the Super Chief is all Pullman on the backside. The El Capitan is chair cars, and you could not get between the two halves of the train. So this made it all the way until Amtrak. Amtrak took it over, kept the name for a while, and then had to give it up and change it over to Southwest Limited. So anyway, here's the tail end of the combined train in 1969. It was not exactly glamorous any longer, but it still does have a drum head on it, and I guess that gives it just a little bit of class. So now I'm in the process of putting this train together, and we're going to run it someplace where somebody's got some broad curves, and we'll see what it looks like. So that's what I've been up to. That's it. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, so the next big event in the region after upcoming Concord convention is next year. We're going to be working with the Hub and the Little Rhodey Division to host the regional convention in Southbridge, Mass. I know they've secured the hotel. They're working on clinician layout tours and op sessions. We do need volunteers. If anybody in the division is interested in volunteering, I know myself, Mike, and Art are sort of involved in the planning committee. Dave Inslee, I believe, is the convention chair, and he's out of the Hub division. So if anybody's interested in helping with that or getting involved in that, I've taken on trying to find layout tours and op sessions. And even if you're not directly in the Southbridge area, if you're in an area that leads to Southbridge, which is everywhere, and you feel like opening up prior or at the other end of the convention to have people come visit your layout, you know, get in touch with me. I would like to have a good assortment of layouts for people to see. I know, like, on the shoreline of Connecticut, there's quite a few layouts, and a lot of people do come up from, you know, the southern area to go to these conventions. So wherever you are, and if you're interested, get in touch with one of us. On division business, we're always looking for layouts for these meetings, somewhere to go to see layouts. We've had, you know, pretty good success in that in the past, but we definitely need more layouts to look at. We're also looking always for ways of showcasing your modeling, whether it's in, like we just did with Steve, some of the stuff he's done, or presenting models on the table over there. Just get in touch with Mike Wheeler on that. Something you'd like to present or show. It doesn't have to be a half hour, you know, or anything. A 10-minute quick presentation is, you know, all we're looking for, and Mike would be glad to help you coordinating that and making that come together, how to put it together, so we could always, you know, see what everybody's doing. We're also looking for a little bit deeper into it, more clinic presenters, where you're definitely presenting something that's a little bit longer and maybe a little more involved, but something to offer at these meetings. So it's a way to get, if you're interested in the AP program, it's a way to get points towards an AP certificate as a volunteer, a clinician. There's a lot of different things you can do that way. And it's also good to just share what you've learned and, you know, apply that knowledge to others so they can learn from you. The next meeting is the 11th of October. and it's going to be somewhere in our southern area of our division. As everybody knows, we try to move the meetings around, realistically, to try to hit the different parts of Connecticut. This is sort of the home base. We have most of our meetings here, but we do try to get out into other areas, our divisions, to make it convenient for people to get to the meetings. One of the things of new business, something we've just introduced, it's an Outstanding Division Service Award. So as you can read there, the award is awarded to a person with a minimum of 3 years of membership in the division, who gives selflessly of themselves to the division without regards of any benefit they might receive from the division. So it's an award that would be issued just recognizing members of this division that have gone above and beyond for service to the division. The details of that program: any member in good standing, nominated by the nomination would have to be in writing to the board of directors. It's open year round, so if it's not at the point in time where it says September 1st, if it's a different time of the year, the nomination would be held until September of that current year. Nominations received after that date would be in recognition possibly for the following year. They just need to state the candidate's name, their nomination to the Outstanding Division Service Award, and a brief history of what that service is that the candidate has provided to the division to warrant the award. So any questions on this, you can talk to myself or Mike or Art with maybe some more clarification on it. But we're looking to just recognize the people that have done a lot for the division in the past and looking for future involvement down the road. So once the nomination is made and how the selection would work, so it would they would receive the award nomination. The current superintendent, Art, and myself and Mike as the two directors. And in the future, once we get recipients of this award, they would be also on this selection committee. So the past recipients would be on the committee, and he would bring those forward to carry one or more of the nominations over to the next year without a need to renominate. So if you don't get it on the first year, your nomination would stay in the queue, so to speak, until the following year. Once a person's been designated or recognized as doing outstanding division service, it's necessary to recognize them again. Once they're a outstanding service, one division service award member, they're for life. Any questions on that before I go on? I know it's something that's new to the division. A lot of the other divisions have these type of awards. We may be a little bit behind the curve on that, but we're trying to get caught up on different things like that. Regional business, the coupler. I'm not sure how many people actually get the paper copy of the coupler, but Chris Cafaro is stepping down in the fall, and he's looking for a replacement for the Coupler magazine, which is the regional newsletter. So anybody that would possibly, have some skills as a editor or as an assistant to an editor, you can get in touch with Chris, and I'm sure if you don't have that information, Art could provide how to make that contact. The Coupler's a pretty good, regional magazine. It does have some pretty good articles and neat information, and it's always nice to see the information leading up to the next convention, and then also see the things that happened at the convention after they've happened. So it's something that, unfortunately, we'd hate to see go away if we can't find somebody to step up and be the editor. They're always looking for articles for that magazine. So if you have that skill and you feel like getting some AP certificate awards towards that, that's something you can definitely look into. Social media, the region's looking for somebody for the social media position to expand the exposure of the hobby to the region. This also qualifies you for some AP recognition. The next convention is coming up in Concord. It's hosted by the Seacoast Division, and the registration for that is open right now. It looks to be like it's going to be a pretty good convention. I think they've sold out base hotel. They're into the backup hotel, so it sounds like they're doing pretty well. Another thing from the NMRA is the partnership program. I don't know how many are really familiar with that, but the partnership program is when businesses and people that provide materials to the hobby, they offer some significant discount savings for being an NMRA member. And you can typically find those at the end of any of the information that the NMRA puts out. It usually has a list of all. You can find it on their website. You can find it in the coupler, I think, and you can also find it in the national information on the partnership program. I know, like one of them, I think it's the hobby shop down in Jersey that sells, I can't think of the name of them now off the top of my head. But what's that? Yankee Dollar. Yeah, I think they're in it. There's quite a few in there. I know that. I think Scenic Express is in there. There's a lot of them that offer. Some of them are like up to 10% off and different things. So I think it's worthwhile to look at that, especially if you're building something or you need some materials. It's just another benefit of the NMRA.
Just for reference, if you don't get the NMRA magazine or the covers, there is a list of the partnerships on the table.
There you go. National business, Discord. I'm not sure how many people are using Discord. It's another way of social interaction between members of the NMRA. I know some people have avoided Discord because they've heard things about Discord. Just understand that this Discord is strictly limited to the NMRA. The particular, when you join this, it's not like you're going to get into something else or go in a different direction. There's a lot of information going on Discord, and I know it's another another social media thing between everything else, between Facebook and all these other things we do. But it is a way of, pretty direct, constant communication with people. You have a question about something or you're looking for something. There's a lot of stuff that goes on, and they have a lot of different channels on there, if you want to call them that, where they're basically broke out into specifics. So if you're interested in like a particular prototype, or you're interested in some type of certain modeling thing you're working on, DCC, for example, or whatever, they have a lot of things on Discord that's available to help you in that, getting that together. As Steve mentioned, the NMRA convention in Novi was a pretty big success. Next year, they're going to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and that'll be the 27th through the 2nd of August. It sounds like it could be a good one, especially getting down that area, Chattanooga. For the old-time members of the NMRA, we all probably remember the national headquarters was down in that area at one time when they had an actual physical building. I know now they work out of an area just north of Chattanooga. I think it's called Sadie Daisy or something like that, Shoddy Daisy or something. But it's an area with a lot of railroad history and everything. So I just did go to Novi, and it was a good time. It's a nice way to get together from people away from your area, and catch up and meet new friends and meet people we've met on social media or whatever, and catch up with those people. I know the NMRA AP committee. I've talked about AP quite a bit today. They are looking at some simplifying of the AP, the achievement program requirements, electronic forms and filing process. They're looking at something we'll be able to start into it. It'll basically you basically can go in there and fill out things as you're going along, and it would just electronically track that to the point where you're ready to actually apply for the AP certificate.
Mark?
Yes.
Back to Chattanooga. My son he just moved, but he lived just north of Atlanta, and not too far from Chattanooga. Those who like Civil War history, it's loaded with it down there. You know, the battle in the clouds and all that stuff all occurred in the Civil War. It's very either in or near or south of Chattanooga. Those that like Civil War history, it's a terrific area as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice areas down there. I plan to go down next year with my camper. I took my camper up to Novi this year and plan to go down to that area. There's a lot of beautiful areas to camp in. I think Chickamauga was right there too. You know, that's also, you know, heavy Civil War.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of history down there. I think, you know, a lot of people go to conventions and they just think it's just about a train convention, but I know my wife's gone on the last, you know, 2 or 3 nationals with me, and there's always been things for her to do and the family to do. You know, typically the conventions are right. There's kind of whole different areas where there's stuff for the families to do. So I think, you know, for people that haven't been to a convention, I know the one that they just had in Novi, I think they had 300, I think if I remember right, first time attendees at Novi. So it was almost 1,000 people went to Novi, and 300 of them were first time. So that's pretty substantial. So, I mean, it's a lot of fun. It's definitely railroading on steroids, as I call it, because I'll tell you what, it's nonstop. You're tired. By the end of the week, you're tired. You're almost ready to step away from trains for a little bit.
Mark, I'll add one more good word in for the national convention is seeing how people operate, how they build layouts, spaces they have in other parts of the country is really good. So if you can take the time and the money to go to one of these conventions or several of these conventions, you'll see a lot more than you might see just being in New England or the Northeast.
Yeah, there's a lot of neat things that people do. Some of the layouts I went to were amazing. There was one guy that had a, you know, physical tower basically in his shed, you know, an actual tower for his layout that was hooked up to his layout. He had a camera with a screen that looked out to the crossing that this tower controlled. So you were actually sitting in the tower area looking at a screen, which looks like a window, but it was actually looking at his model railroad. And as you threw the switch and this, you know, controlled this tower, the interlockings of the tower, you were watching it on the railroad. It's just amazing some of the stuff people do. Mike's going to come up now, and he's going to talk about the next modeling challenge, the toy train rehab.
Yeah. So we're doing our second annual modeling contest. If you remember last year, we had the plastic container module. This year we're doing toy train rehab. I'm sure you've been to many train shows and you see the piles of old Tyco and AHM type cars for, you know, pennies on the dollar. There's a plethora of great, fantastic models out now from, you know, all the great manufacturers with fantastic detail, and you pay $120 per car. The goal of this contest is to take one of the old train cars that you can buy for $1 or so and rehab it into something you would want to run on your railroad. So pretty loose rules here. You're going to start with any old train car in any scale that has snap-in trucks. Anything that is attached by a screw is not eligible. So, you know, if you're going to go to, like you see some of these cars here, these old Tyco AHM cars where you can pop the trucks out, you can start with any one of those. I believe N-Scale is something similar, so you should be able to start there, or O if you'd like. We're going to choose the winner by popular vote at our Christmas party in December here in Wethersfield, and the winner gets a $100 gift certificate to Train World. So that's usually our biggest attended meeting. We hope to see many, many entries to the contest. In terms of the general rules here, the finished car must retain the original shell and frame, but you can modify them quite a bit, however you'd like. You just have to start with them. We're going to weigh every car to make sure it holds up to NMRA standard weight, so it's operationally accurate. We're also going to check that the couplers are at the right height and operate and swing correctly as well. You must detail it. So I say detail in quotations because it's a very loose requirement. We're looking for something more than just painting and decaling the car and calling it done. So whether that's grabs, that is brake detail or roof blocks, whatever you might feel is appropriate. This isn't an NMRA modeling contest where you will lose points if your grab irons aren't straight or if you leave some cast on detail. But the idea is to go further than just paint and decals. And to prove that you started with something from the toy train box, we just ask that you display a photo of the car in its as-purchased state. So those are the 5 requirements. I'll be sending this out later this week via our constant contact. It'll also be on our social media pages. Questions about what's eligible or what you'd like to do, you may reach out to me through Facebook or through the email accounts that you email address. So, any questions, let me know, and we look forward to seeing what you guys come up with.
So there's the announcement for the Chattanooga Scenic Express next year. Calendar of events. It's getting that time of year where there's a lot of different things going on across the regional convention up in Concord, New Hampshire. For those that haven't registered yet, get a look at the website, and there's a lot of stuff going on up there. And it also should be, you know, there's a lot of nice things to do up in that area. Train shows, like I said, it's that time of year where we're going to start to see the train shows start kicking in. So there's a bunch of different train shows. This is in Concord in August. And then we have some local stuff a little closer to us. The Amherst Railway Society, they typically do a surplus equipment sale every year. And that's going to be in Palmer at their headquarters building in August, the 23rd of August. And they've had some pretty decent stuff. I've gone a couple of times. They've had some good stuff to get rid of. They get a lot of donations, and they get a lot of layout takedowns. You know, somebody's moving or somebody's passed away, and they not contact them to come in and take the layouts down. So they do have quite an assortment of things there. Here is the New Haven Railroad. For those that are into the New Haven Railroad, they're having a convention and train show, and that's the 5th through the 7th of September. And I believe that, yeah, that's in New London. So, trade show, the H.C. Wilcox Technical High School in Meriden. That's at the end of September. Another train show in Boxborough, Mass, 4th and 5th of October. The Great Northern New England Train Show, that's coming up. I believe that's up in New Hampshire, Dover, New Hampshire. Vernon, a little closer to home for us, November, 9th of November, having a train show at the high school in Rockville. Clinics. First clinic we're going to have is on Cricut. And I know that's becoming really popular in model railroading. And I think, David, you're going to show us that?
Sure.
All right.
Just for reference, anybody that wants to see any of the information that was showing up on the screen about train shows or whatnot, all you got to do is go to the Nutmeg Division YouTube channel and go on it and blow up the screen or whatever the case may be, so you can get everything that you need.
All the general announcements seen today are in the video on our YouTube channel. You can check that out at any.
Right. There you go. Yay. There it is, whatever you find. Well,
It's just sitting there. Is it a PowerPoint? It is a PowerPoint. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Nope. Okay. It's not in there. It's not quite loaded. Okay. Yeah, I can't cancel this. There you go. They tested this on a different computer than I did it too. I couldn't use my computer. There's a second one. We do some technical issues. This one here? Yes. There we go. All right, third time was the charm. Hey, before I get started, my name's Dave Yale. Yes.
I don't think we're recording at the moment.
Recording has started.
The recording has started.
We were?
Yeah, okay.
Well, now it says it's stopped, so.
I think we're good. My name's Dave Yale. I'm the clinic coordinator here at Nutmeg. It did say recording has started on this computer, so. Always looking for people to present clinics. Something we're going to try. We're looking at the October meeting, our mini clinics. So if you have, for instance, like 15 minutes of information you want to present, but you don't think you want to go to the length of a whole clinic, this is ideal. We'll have several people that will present. And if you've never tried giving a clinic, but you've thought about it before, this is an excellent way to test the waters. All right, today I'm talking about Cricut cutting machines. It's one of the brands of machines that are used primarily by scrapbookers and crafters, and it cuts an amazing amount of material. And I had looked at this years ago, and I've used it for other stuff, but I actually haven't used it much in model railroading. So I decided I needed to sit down and find out what I could and couldn't do with this machine. And is it a worthwhile investment in my model railroading dollars? There we go. So there's different kinds of cutting machines, but there's some things I'm going to cover in particular. I'm also going to talk about design software a little bit. I'm not going to do a teaching class on how to use this software because it's well beyond what you can do in the clinic, but just to give a little overview of what can be used. Design Space is the program that comes with the Cricut, that works for the Cricut, that you load your designs into, and it talks to the Cricut. And I talk about the machine itself, and at the end, we're going to have a little demonstration, hopefully. We'll see how much it relies on the internet, and if the internet works. So, what about laser cutters? That's the obvious alternative to a Cricut machine. And laser cutters can do a lot of different things. They can cut a lot of materials, and the price is no longer $5,000. They're coming down. X-Tool has a pretty good reputation. They sell a unit for under $2,000 from Amazon. That's not bad. It's 40 watts, which is actually pretty strong. You can get rotary machines where you can engrave on round things. It's amazing what you can do. There's also one, which has come out kind of recently, the Cricut Falcon A1. It's only a 10 watt, which means if you're going to cut a thicker material, you have to cut multiple times along the same path. It's on sale, actually, under $500. It's like $469 or $479 on Amazon. And I got to be honest, I've been thinking about it. It's gotten down to the point where I can look at the price and say, I wonder how that works. And like I said, you can do a lot of things. You can do leather. You can make leather items with engraving on it. So maybe in the future, we'll be clinic on the top. There's also
in addition to the Cricut company, there's a company called Silhouette, and they put out a machine called the Cameo 5. It's almost 469. It's very similar in capabilities and operation to the Cricut. I've never owned a Silhouette machine, so I can't tell you exactly the differences, but everything I've heard, it's a good machine. Now, Cricut is kind of the name in this industry. This is a Cricut Maker 4. What you see on the table is a Cricut Maker. The current machine is $400. And the advantage over laser, if you can cut the material you want to cut with the Cricut, you don't have the dangers of a laser, which, you know, the safety features are there, but laser light still is a hazard. The other thing is smoke, especially cutting different materials. You have to have a vent system in place, or you have to live with the smoke, and I don't recommend that. Also, my ex-wife and her husband have an Etsy business, and they had a Glowforge laser that they were using, and they were making some really nice things. They were making money selling these things online, and then they started a fire with their Glowforge, and the insurance check was $100,000. They were cutting acrylic, and the acrylic caught on fire, and it emitted a toxic white gas and powder that got into, for instance, the compressor motor on their refrigerator, meaning the entire refrigerator had to be disposed of appropriately and replaced. So the damage was not from flame. The damage was from using the wrong acrylic inadvertently in a laser cutter. So there are dangers with laser cutters. If you're just cutting wood and you have a vent, then you're probably fine. But there is that element. So what I have is a Cricut Maker that has no number after it. We're up to number 4 now. One of the big differences, the number 4 can do a 12-foot long piece of vinyl and cut one big sign off that 12-foot long piece of vinyl. I don't need a 12-foot long piece of vinyl for model railroading. I guess you could, I guess you could put it up on the wall, you know, Dave's Model Railway. I could do it a letter and a sign. I like this stuff. I bought mine in 2018. Tells you how old it is. You can still get it off Amazon for $250, although it will be a pretty champagne color, I guess. So this is a video that's not playing very well. Playing really poorly, of a Cricut cutting machine in action. So what the machine does, I'm going to describe it a little bit. You have a cutting blade. You have multiple different cutting blades, and we'll talk about the different ones. And the machine moves the cutting blade back and forth. And as it does that, it moves the material underneath it. So you have an X and a Y cut. It also picks the cutting blade up when it doesn't want to cut. So it's the XYZ, the same thing you see in a 3D printer, moving in the 3D. Laser printers go on and off for the X, but they go the X and the Y also. Let's talk about what files you need to use with this Cricut. It likes SVG files, scalable vector graphic. One of the most popular software packages is called Inkscape. And that's because it's free, and there's a bunch of tutorials and user support available. And I don't use Inkscape that much, so I can't tell you exactly what it does or doesn't do, but I know a lot of people use it. You also have CorelDRAW and Adobe Illustrator, which output SVGs and are very good. And I think CorelDRAW is $600 a year now. They're subscription-based now. You can't just buy a full day's 5-year-old copy cheap used from somebody and use it. You have to pay per year to use those. and I don't use them enough to make it worthwhile. This is a little demonstration of what you can do with Inkscape. This user scanned in a picture of instructions from an old airplane kit from like the 70s. And the red lines are from Inkscape. And what he's doing is using Inkscape to basically trace over these lines. Now, for me, I think about all those line drawings in Model Railroad over the years for all these structures. So if you scan them in as a PDF and then trace them, you can actually cut out all the wooden pieces you need from that drawing. And no, I haven't tried it myself yet. How I work with this, and I call it my stupid workflow. I use a program called SketchUp. It was put out years ago. It used to be free, and it's not anymore. You can get a version that's free, but the good version is, again, a subscription plan. I believe my version is from 2017. I have add-ins that different users wrote because there was a huge support community, and they were all free. SketchUp do many, many things that they didn't originally intend for it to do. You actually can find an old copy of SketchUp and download it, but it's not as easy. Why do I use SketchUp? It's not very good at this, to be quite honest, but I know it. I've spent hundreds and hundreds of hours doing 3D design on SketchUp. I've learned what it does well and how to work around the issues. So for me, it's not worth learning something new. Plus, I can design in full size. So that means I tell it, I'm working in feet. So if I have a building that's 20 feet by 40 feet, I design it in SketchUp 20 by 40 feet. When I'm all done, then I can shrink it down to scale. Or, for instance, if I want to use titchy windows that are a certain size, I can scale it down to HO before I cut the window openings, and then cut the window openings using the size of that titchy window. I don't have to try to convert that to full size. When I get all done, I save it. I design it flat. It has no height. So it's basically a 2D model. I export it as an STL, which is usually used for 3D printing. I import it into FreeCAD, which is online, and FreeCAD will export it as an SVG. So I use this online service to make it into an SVG file. And sometimes I load it into Inkscape because I need to make some changes. Sometimes I can load it directly into the Cricut design software. So this is SketchUp, sped up many, many, many times. And I have it scaled to feet. So this is a 20 by 30 setup. And you can see I'm drawing doors and windows. And I'm just doing them like 3 by 4. And then I scaled it. I get rid of the doors and windows. And there I have a basic building walls. That's all there is to designing it. Now, of course, a more complicated building, you're going to spend a lot more time. Now, the other possibility you can do is to design this actually as a 3D building and then export it that way by placing it in FreeCAD with each side of the building down and turn, and it will make an SVG from that side of the building. Now, you may notice up in the corner there, I can't really see it. There, it says SVG in a box in the upper right. There's 3 columns that says SVG. And SketchUp is supposed to export this direct to SVG. And when you look at it in an SVG viewer, it looks fine. And then you import it into Design Space, and it's really stupidly broken. So that's not possible. The other thing, 2D CAD. Our battery's running low. 2D CAD program is actually the way you should do this. I don't know how to operate a 2D CAD program. I've been trying to learn, I'm not there yet. There is LibreCAD, there's a bunch of free ones.
and they export generally into SVG format directly. There's also AutoCAD. If you have access to AutoCAD somehow, it will export into a VFX file, and Inkscape can read that VFX file and export it into SVG. So if you are there, you have a really nice system that you can use. So there's lots of free choices, and the advantage is that these SVG files, all the laser printers I checked work with SVG files. So if you make this cut file, you have the ability to use it in a Cricut or a laser, either one. Let's talk about blades for a moment. This Cricut has a ton of different things to cut with. And on the screen here, these are four that I have not used in model railroading. First is a rotary blade. It's for fabric. I have cut out fabric with this. It works really well to cut out intricate fabric pieces. The next one's an embossing tip. And I got one of these thinking I could do like mortar lines and brick walls and such. It's too big. Now, I may find something I can use it for in the future, but at this point, because I model in HO, I have not found a good use for it. Engraving blade can actually engrave in metal, or what most people use it for is acrylic. You can take a clear piece of acrylic and you can engrave it and engrave letters in it. And it looks pretty good. And the last one over there is called a scoring blade. You know how you have tickets that tear apart? The Cricut can cut those dashed lines in the paper. So you can have tear-offs either on tickets, or if you have a flyer or something, you can do that should you want to. I take it back. That's a different blade. This is a scoring blade if you want paper that you want to fold, like cardstock, and you wouldn't want to put a line in it, so it folds on the line. This is what you use to put that line in it. But it does have the other blade too. The ones generally I'm using, we have what they call the premium fine point blade. They only have one fine point blade, so I guess they're all premiums. I actually had to order one of these because I couldn't find the one that I owned. So I have an off-brand Amazon blade that seems to work pretty good in here right now. And you use this for thinner materials. If you're cutting paper, if you're cutting, vinyl is the big thing. Everybody cuts vinyl with these. Iron-on vinyl. You can get a vinyl sheet that you actually can iron onto a shirt. So you can cut a design out, put it on the shirt, iron it on, and then you have a cheap one-off customized t-shirt, which this is not, by the way. This is from these little trains. I don't know if you guys saw, but these are actually little trains, stripes in the flag, and this was like 16 bucks on Amazon. So I said, what the hell? So this is what you're using to cut your smaller pieces. And this is what's called a drag blade. It doesn't really show up, but when it goes around a corner, it kind of drags the blade around the corner. Now, because the corners are usually like a right angle corner, pretty sharp, there's a very, very small radius to it generally. You don't even notice it normally. If you're cutting something for model railroading, though, like that a window or some of the pieces going to go into, you may have to clean up that corner just a tiny bit. And we have the deep point blade. And this is obviously for thicker things. And cardboard, chipboard, foam, leather, magnetic sheets, you know, they sell 8.5 by 11 sheets of, I guess it's plastic, but they're magnetic. And you can cut them out and you can make like refrigerator magnets. You can put a sticker on them and make refrigerator magnets. And this is my favorite. This is the knife blade. That's like a little X-Acto. And if you look at the top of that, that's a set of gears on the top. So what this thing does, if this is the blade, it'll cut. Then it'll pick it up and it'll turn it and line it up for the next cut and put it down and make the cut. And then pick it up. Now, if it's going around a corner, it can turn, you know, it can turn the blade as it goes. But for straight cuts and square cuts, you end up with a very square cut. And you can cut balsa and basswood. Well, there we go for construction, for set. And craft foam, heavy chipboard. Heavy chipboard, if you're going to do paper modeling, which I'm hoping to get a clinic on, working on it, we'll see.
This lets you cut that chipboard without having, and you can use an X-Acto blade and a straight edge, and I've done that. And I've also come off the straight edge as I cut inadvertently, and also I ruined piece. This cuts it straight. All right, this is a screen record. Don't worry about that program. I'm loading up the Cricut design space. And it's set up to try to sell you everything, so you got to try to click through that stuff. Now this is the space that Cricut uses, and you can upload a file to it, and it's going to be hard to see. You can just barely see the lines on the screen, but that's actually the building. There you can see it. That's a building I designed in SketchUp. So I loaded it into the design space. Now I wanted to cut it the other way. I wanted to cut it up and down. So design space let me do that, and I went through all these steps. And you got the distances and such in here. If you have multiple designs, you can put them together in this space, and you can combine them into one design. So I was trying to line it up. When you look at the maps, the mats have a checker square on it, and I'm assuming it relates to all this. So I'm trying to be super careful and where the material is on maps. Save the project. So if I want to do it again, it's there in design space. Should have sped this up a little. Just pick what mat you're going to cut it on. And here we go. And wonderfully, Cricut just rearranged it on me. So all that work was wasted, basically. So I'll line it up again. Definitely should have done this at 2 or 3 times speed. Now this is actually the cutting mat that you would see here, a representation. So when you get it set up in this stage, this is what it's going to go through the machine as. And unfortunately, you have to do it by eye. And what I do a lot of times is if I have a bottom edge like that, I will put like the basswood on the mat perfectly aligned with that white line, as perfectly as I can get it. Then you have to tape it down, and you'll see a little bit of a cutting sequence after this. But that way, that bottom line meets up perfectly with the bottom of the clapboard, and it's straight, and I don't have to worry about it. I'm actually cutting it. Now, these are all the different materials. There are 300 materials. Card stocks, different kinds of fabrics. And what it does is when you pick this, the machine knows what blade you should be using, and it also knows what pressure it should use when it's cutting. And I don't even know what a lot of this stuff is. Leather, different types of leather. Of course, paper. Grocery bags. You want to cut up a grocery bag, you can do it. Different kinds of plastics. No styrene listed.
That's what my question was. You can't load in brick material or something.
Yeah, it doesn't say, if you have brick material, you got to kind of, through a little bit of experience, figure out what material that's similar to. Now, I have some styrene I'll be showing at the end here. So I loaded the basswood 1/16 inch. So here it is, taped down onto the purple mat, which is the really sticky mat. That's the high adhesion mat. It loads it in and calibrates. It thinks about it a second. And then see the blades going up and down, and it's hard to see on the screen, but that gear on the top is turning. So it's spinning the blade back and forth. Now, what it does on a piece of basswood like this, it goes over it 14 times. So the video I took of this was like 25 minutes long. I'm not going to sit here and show the whole video. But it presses down with that knife blade 14 times over the same exact lines. At the end, they're still perfectly aligned. It doesn't go out of registration. So whatever way it calibrates and keeps track, it's very accurate. Now, you may have noticed as we jumped, I'm actually cutting a different piece of wood. It's because I'm a horrible video editor and because I screwed up something. But here's the last cuts that it's doing. And you unload the material. And actually, I have a tool set that's made by Cricut, probably overpriced, but it actually works very well. And this is a little scraper. It lets you get underneath the piece and pry it off the backer board. Now, you see one mistake I made? The cut between the side and the end didn't get made. That little triangle is just because I was using the wood that I had. And that piece of wood was like $16 from the hobby shop. Now, let me. Here are two samples of wood that I cut out. One of them is that one that you saw in the video. One is from previous. Now, I can be honest, when I look at this, I sit there and I say, this is as good as the laser cut pieces that I've seen in craftsman kits. In my opinion, for this type of wood, you get the same level of results.
Do you have any issues? It seems like these are relatively soft material. Does the blade kind of get caught or jump or anything, or do you go ahead?
I haven't had it. You can replace just the blade portion of that. You don't have to replace the whole housing. So it's like an X-Acto. If you get a problem, put a new blade in. So, but for what and they cut quite a bit of stuff with this blade. So far, it's still working. Some other stuff here before I talk about this. This first piece is a fairly piece of clapboard siding, and I cut this on the basswood setting, which is 14 cuts, 14 passes. And you see I was able to snap one out. It did not cut all the way through. All right. I was kind of disappointed on how it's worked in this thicker Cedar, and I'll send this around. Now you could use an X-Acto and you could finish these cuts and you can get the pieces out. And I guess it gives you a really good guideline as opposed to using a ruler and a metal straight edge to do your first four. So it has some advantages. But on thinner styrene, it worked fine. So this is, I forget what thickness this is, but it's fairly flexible. So I pass those around so you can see how it did. I did not try going over that material again or setting it up for like 22 cuts. If I had, it might have cut all the way through the styrene, but that would take 45 minutes by the time it got done, and it just seems like it was pretty excessive.
Does it know when it's cut all the way through the material?
No, not that smart.
So he did, sorry, after.
You do cut the mat, even on a successful cut. Mm-hmm. You put a little line, it doesn't go very far into the mat, just goes a little bit into the mat. So as you use the mats, you'll see all your old projects on them, and eventually your mat will have to be replaced. So, a lot of people, they like to use their X-Acto. Like they like to use the straight edge. That's fine. You like that. But what about you have an area in your layout and you say, geez, I think I want to put some sort of freight building there. It needs to be roughly 2 by 3 inches. So you say, okay, let me sit down, and you make a drawing of it. Now this I cut out of a foam, It was a horrible phone because I was in a hurry and I went down to the dollar shop near my house and I grabbed something from there. Don't ever do that. The stuff, the coatings came off on the mat when I was peeling it, and it got kind of beat up taking it off. But if you make a little mock-up like this, you set it on your layout for a week or two, and you say, okay, does that fit? Well, wait a minute, no, after 2 weeks you sit there and say, you know what? I have ground level freight doors on it. That building, I should have had a rail dock on that side. I can move it over 2 inches against this track, or I'm going to put in a siding. You just go back to your drawing. You take and increase the height of the building. Cut it out again. Blue tape it up and put that building onto your layout. And you sit there and after 2 weeks say, yeah, that's what I want to do. That's going to work. Then you load in your basswood or whatever material you're going to use. You cut out your building. So, or whatever. But it gives you a planning ability and the ability to go back and change things easily. Even if you've cut it out of wood, if you decide you don't like that building anymore, you can take that building off the layout, change the drawing, and cut a new building and make a new building to fit the spot, and then you can put the first building somewhere else. Some other things you can do with these machines. These are pictures I got off the internet, so they're not me. This person takes their Cricut, they cut out stencils. They put the stencils on the building, then they use a paper towel and some paint, they dab in the lettering, and then they take the stencils off. So you could do any kind of custom sign you want on there, and it's not on paper and you're trying to sink it into the joint, the mortar joints, which can be done very well and very effectively. This is just another way you can think about those projects. Here's someone that wanted to modernize the end of their caboose. So they used styrene, sort of like the pieces going around, and they obviously had to clean it up a little. They had some edges that weren't perfect, but he cleaned it up a little, and he put it on the end of his caboose to make it a more modern caboose that's been upgraded with a safety measure.
How can a piece can leave? Try with the cutting rate, like a 32nd of an inch.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the limit of the cut?
I have never tried to go thinner than that. That's HO.
Yeah.
I have never tried to go thinner than that. You might be able to. One thing I've been thinking about, and I haven't tried it yet. I didn't have enough time for this presentation. I sort of had to finish it because we didn't have another clinic for today, so I stepped in. If you take vinyl and you cut squares out of it, make very thin pieces of vinyl, whatever color you choose, then you take it off and stick it on a piece of clear plastic, and all of a sudden you have a window with all the little panes and all the pieces of the window on there. And it's not going to be perfectly reproductive because those pieces are round, they come out further, but there you get a nice, and if you light it, if you have a dark vinyl, it's going to be light proof, and you're going to get a really good effect. And I'm going to show you something that's similar. Custom lettering. This person models in a larger scale, 3-rail, and he wanted a specific name on his tender, and he printed the lettering on the Cricut, and this clear tape, it's called transfer tape. When you're making a decal to go on something, like on a car window or something, you cut it out, you take off the pieces you don't want, you put this transfer paper on it to keep it all lined up, and you use that to put it on your final surface. So that's what he did, and unfortunately that little free conference call box is on top of it, but it looked perfect for what he does, for 3-rail, 027. I don't think it'll work in HO because it's not going to conform to the surface underneath. There's going to be a little bit of a thickness that you would be able to see, but for some purposes it's fine. How about a control panel? The lines for the tracks, the labels, you could do it all on a Cricut. You could do it this way. You use a piece of transfer tape to keep it all lined up, put it right down on your control panel surface, and you've got a nice professional looking design. Do it on a piece of paper, but I think this way might look nicer. This person took a styrene base and applied brick material on top of it. Those windows there are all individually cut and popped out. And the person said it took like 16 hours to cut that styrene. But after all that time, you notice the cuts are all lined up. And going back to saying, I think the result was pretty good. A building that he's not going to be able to buy from Walters, that's for sure. Shingles. This person takes their and cuts 3 layers of shingles, and they're all offset a little bit. Then he paints them, and he takes those 3 pieces of paper and he fits them in so the shingles are sticking out through the spaces and overlapping each other. He glues it all, puts it under a heavy weight to keep it all flat while it dries, and you end up with an effect that's on the right. And I gotta say, I think those are pretty good shingles in my mind. So, and he did it on regular paper. It cost him almost nothing. And it's not all individual rows. Just things like this. This is dollhouse size, actually, but and it's not. It's a pretty steep stairway. You get tired going up and down those stairs. But here's how somebody was able to design the steps that they needed. And now, you notice all the corners are rounded? They were using a different machine, not the maker. And it's one of those drag bite machines that when it goes at a right angle, it actually goes around the corner a little bit. So you can see the radiuses on the corners of the cuts. But he was able to put together a stairway. And the great thing is that in drawing this, if you needed stairways of different heights, it's pretty easy to adapt that drawing. Everybody sees these car window vinyls. You can do them on the Cricut. I like American flags. I've liked American flags for 30 or 40 years. It's not political for me. But I love this with the tracks. If you want to really present yourself as a trained person, throw one of them in the back. And actually, I like this one. If you are a Conrail fan, you should have that on your back glass. All right, I am going to try to demonstrate this. We're going to see if it works. And do it. Do you have some on the screen? No, you can be. Well, no, for you. Oh, yeah, here. But it's we've already got it. All right. I'm going to do a test talk and you get a couple of minutes. So I'll take our right now. Sure. Yeah, but I'll take our right now. And we have another class on it. We saw those a bunch of stuff quick, and we go in for our second class. Cool. Thanks. I'm like,
Started.
Okay, we got thank you, David, for that very interesting. I know there's so much stuff out there, and I just mentioned it to somebody. I've avoided getting involved in 3D printing because it almost seems like a hobby within the hobby. It's so involved, but something like Cricut cutting, this machine, it seems pretty simple, pretty easy to learn. So that's pretty neat. The next one we have is from Adam on Cedar Hill Yard.
Well, I wanted to approval of the account would be possible at a cost of recording.
Yeah. Yeah. I will close the record. Yeah, you can move that box if you want to get that box on it.
Would you like me to hit the light? Ready? Okay, good morning. Thank you for having me. I was really surprised. I did a presentation at the Northeast Prototype Modelers Meet and at the end of the night. And Dave was there. I was really surprised that he asked for my email address to possibly think about presenting here. I was surprised anybody would want to see this crap all over again. So, anyway, so what we're going to do is I'm going to give the first half of the presentation is an overview of what's left of the Cedar Hill Yard today in North Haven and New Haven. And then I'll get into how I took parts of it and squeezed some of it and modified some of it into a layout that is in my apartment. So what we're going to do before I get to the slideshow is I'll take you on a satellite tour on Bing Maps. Usually I use Google Maps, but what I wanted to do orient things so north is that way, because that's how my layout is in my apartment. And you can't do that on Google Maps without paying for something. So I tried Bing instead, and it works just fine. So we're going to start, if you can see where it is, we're going to start over here at Cedar Interlocking, which is where the yard lead, the thoroughfare as it's called, splits off from Amtrak, the Springfield line, goes through the woods down into the yard. So we'll go this way. I'll take you through a lot of this. We'll go down to where everything joins back up at Mill River Interlocking, and then we're not going to complete the circle because there's really not much in this area, but we'll just go through some of this area. And then when we get to pictures and Maya, we'll follow the same sort of pathway.
Did you point out where I-91 is going?
Yes, yep. Yes, so 91 is all along right here, down the east side of the yard.
Okay.
Remember, north is that way as we're looking at things right now.
Okay, thank you.
The way the Quinnipiac River meandering through everything. And then, of course, New Haven itself is over here. So, Cedar Interlocking is where the thoroughfare splits off from Amtrak Springfield line. The Springfield line is 2 tracks through here. The yard lead, if you're on a southbound freight, takes a hard left, goes into the woods, crosses underneath the Route 40 connector, and then it eventually emerges in what is called the Grove Yard, which is behind the Home Depot, Dick's Sporting Goods Plaza. There's a BJ's over there. There's pretty much one of everything on there now. They've built a lot in the last few years. But when an inbound train from West Springfield comes in, this is where they'll drop the inbound traffic, and then they'll take the power off into the yard to grab the outbound train. This is Universal Drive, which is off of exit 9. Here we have the P&W Middletown branch, the former airline. The old Stop and Shop facility here, which is occupied by a couple of different companies now, including Bizzuto's, the trucking company. Here we have what used to be Circuit City, now PC Richards. And this is the CSX yard office. I should have started with the current part of what's left of Cedar Hill is occupied by CSX. Problem is the Worcester and Amtrak that Southern runs in and out of it, although they don't. They bring CSX traffic in and out. That's all they do. They don't have their own customers or anything like that. So what CSX does is the outbound traffic here for CSO to pick up. So when CSO1 comes in from West Springfield, they'll drop their train in the Grove Yard, cut the power off, hitch on to whatever's here, and off they go back towards Springfield. So on this particular day, the satellite imagery was shot. It looks like they had a pretty big train to go back. This area is just car storage for CSX. As we follow, the airline goes around the east end of everything. So CSX has two pretty big transflow terminals that they service, which is pretty much all tank cars. Sometimes something gets delivered in covered hoppers too. I know there's some propane that goes in there, but there's a lot of different stuff. As you can see, there are a lot of cars here. And then the second part of the facility is on the other side of this crossing, and there are a lot of cars in that view. So as we keep following things southward, yeah, you can see a few covered hoppers in there as well. This is the Sims Metal Management Facility, that monstrosity, which you can see from 91. It's hard to miss this the side of it's blue, the big blue building, because you'll see the Sims logo. They used to be called Chavonis some time ago. And you can see some cars on the pretty long siding that goes well into the facility. Part of what they do is they crush up old vehicles. So if you're in the New Haven or North Haven area, you pass a truck that has crushed cars. It's a pretty good bet that's where that truck is going, and then they grind up the cars and ship it out by rail. So now over here, and we'll get up to this area in just a second, but we're still following this is all CSX traffic. This is the airline still. We have this side off into the Anastasio transloading area. These piles here are steel billets, which I'll get to those a little bit more later, but those come in by rail and they go to the Nucor plant in Wallingford, and I think they make rebar, chain link fence, things like that. They also get coil cars of coiled steel in there, and then of course in the distance as you're driving down 91, it's a very long siding that they have. As you're driving south down 91, you can see their structure that is, I call it a garlic dome. It's kind of what it looks like, but that's where they load construction debris. Construction debris is a huge commodity that gets shipped out of Cedar Hill these days. And they also, a couple of years ago, started transloading salt. So in the spring, haven't seen any this year, kind of oddly, but the last few springs, I would see big cuts of covered hoppers of salt on CSO going down to Cedar Hill. And then after the winter, they would replenish it again. So it wasn't a year-round thing, but again, this year, oddly, haven't seen any of that so far. So I'll backtrack just a little bit and go around the other side of the yard. So we're going back up towards the yard office, PC Richards, and we're going to go up this way now. So Providence and Worcester, when they come off of the airline, the Middletown branch, this spot is known as Kelly's, where they come in, they cross through CSX's territory, and then they follow everything up this way That is a massive pile, by the way, of Jersey barriers. There's got to be a couple hundred of them there. You'll see a picture of that a little bit later, and I do have a small pile on my layout as well. So they meander through sort of the woods here. There's an overhead walkway that's still standing, buried deep in the woods. And then they come out into their section of the yard here. They get a lot of, the vast majority of their traffic through Cedar Hill is aggregate stone that comes out of the Tilcon quarry on the Durham-Wallingford line, Reed's Gap. And a lot comes over from the Plainfield area as well. They also have a lot of cement and sand that goes to a few different Palumbo trucking facilities in the area. You'll see a picture of one of those later. And then also, there is one CSX customer over here, and I think it's Anastasio transloads on this side of the yard. There is one track in here that is for transloading telephone poles off of flat cars. So now, continuing south, everything starts to come back together. Right around somewhere in this area is a very important switch where the track splits. And when you go this way, you are headed towards Mill River Interlocking and New Haven and points west, which the P&W Stone trains use. But when you go up and around this way, this turns into what's called the high grade, which takes a hard left turn, crosses over the airline, and then that comes out underneath 91 to Shoreline Junction, where it connects with the Northeast Corridor. This is the exit 8 area as you're driving up and down the highway. And meanwhile, the airline itself crosses the Quinnipiac River, so does the corridor. We'll see pictures of both of these bridges in a little bit. So the P&W Stone trains towards Danbury in New York, they go out, in and out this way. CS also goes out this way. They have one or two customers west of New Haven on Metro North that they still service. And they also service this track here, which I believe is also operated by Anastasio. They transload lumber and fertilizer. A lot of fertilizer goes into that. So we're going to follow this down. We're getting close to Mill River, but then there's a lead that splits off and goes into what's now the Amtrak Maintenance of Way Yard, which is what all of this is. A lot of ballast hoppers, maintenance of way equipment. Sometimes you'll see a Sperry rail car parked in there. And also, this is where Providence and Worcester keeps their power and has a crew trailer, which is right there. So their base, if you want to call it that, is pretty separate from where the yard is. So it's a whole chore for them to get in and out of their yard. And now we've gotten pretty much right back into the Springfield line, which went around the west side of everything. And then it all comes back together. Again, that's in north. Passes underneath 91. What is that? Ferry Street, 91, and then Blatchley Avenue, and then Mill River Interlocking itself is a very long interlocking. It's a whole web of crossovers, and as you go a little farther south, we have the Bell Dock Industrial, which is a P&W serviced by P&W. They bring steel in there, and one of the Palumbo trucking terminals is located down there near the port of New Haven. And then one last thing I want to show you before we get to my actual slideshow is CSX. A couple of times a week, they come out through Mill River onto Amtrak, and then they shove up the Springfield line into right around here. There it is with what they call the Hartford Industrial. Where that name came from, I don't know, because obviously we're nowhere near Hartford, but they shoved into this siding to a chemical plant, which I think it's called something else now, but it used to be Crevitz. And so they've actually been very busy lately. They've been pretty much, they unload, I should say, 5 cars at a time, and they've been getting pretty much 5 in and 5 out every time they've been getting switched lately. So it's been good to see some traffic there. That right now is the only customer that CSX services on the Springfield line itself, in Wallingford and north of Wallingford. CSO has all the traffic. Yes.
Can you just orient me to where the old concrete coal tower?
Yes. Yep. So the coaling tower is right there.
Oh, right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Yeah, of course.
Very big.
Yep. And then occasionally also CSX will bring some flat cars of rail. You can see a couple of them there in and out of A&K Railroad, A&K Railroad materials. Many years ago, they actually used to weld the rail and ship out welded rail trains. I haven't seen one of those in a long, long time. All of this, come on. Oops. All of this apparatus here is where they get. Lately, actually, I've been seeing welded rail trains come in from the west for CSX. Actually put a lot of welded rail down in Cedar Hill, and then Amtrak has been getting some for Springfield line projects. One actually just came down last week. So just to zoom back out, that was a tour, just the satellite view of everything. Remember, north is that way, and we went down through mostly we just went down through this area with a little bit of almost completing the circle up this way. Route 5 runs along here, right next to the Springfield line. It's pretty unremarkable. There are no customers, there's no freight traffic on that section of the Springfield line right now. There used to be a couple of CSX customers up around here, around Sackett Point Road, but they don't get anything now. So we'll go to my actual slideshow, and we will go through a bunch of photos, both ground photos and drone pictures that I've taken over the years, and then we'll get to the layout itself. I didn't even think to update the title down here at the bottom. I do know where we are. So I'm sorry I didn't get to that. Okay, there we go. We've already done this. This is what we're about to start, looking at some current photos, and then we will continue into the layout. So this is Cedar Interlock. CSO used to run down in the afternoons many years ago. Well, over the decades, they've changed their schedule a lot. They run at night now, mostly, to stay out of the way of Amtrak and CT Rail. But anyway, here they are coming off of track 2 onto the thoroughfare. Something that I was taught as you're looking at the Springfield line, if you look north, it's track 1 on this side, track 2 on that side, and the way that I was taught to remember that is that Tom Brady's number was 12, and you're facing Massachusetts. So when you look that way, so now we're going to start in the Grove Yard. The thoroughfare mostly just goes through the woods, so there's nothing much to see. But we're looking at, we're behind Home Depot right now. That I think is BJ's over, no, BJ's is on the other side. What is that? I think that's Dick's, maybe. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, this is a drone picture. I was not standing on the Universal Drive overpass. I wouldn't recommend doing that. So this is where CSO will drop the inbound freight. CSX will use this for car storage for cars going out west on Metro North. just because it's easier for them to keep the cars that way so they don't have to keep running around everything. This was the first P40 that was rebuilt out in Indiana for CT rail, and it was the only one that came down back towards New Haven this way, down CSO. The rest of them went to Albany on Amtrak and then across CSX over towards Boston and then down the corridor to New Haven. So I didn't realize at the time that would be the only one that would come in that way, but I did want to grab some photos of it while it was sitting there. This is Kelly's. We're behind Michael's now. Universal Drive is over here. That's P&W headed up towards Middletown with CSX waiting for them to get out of the way. This was probably 10 years ago. This picture was taken. P&W had some lease power running around from GATX and Citigroup. This is across the tracks now. This is from the fire escape on the Michaels building, actually. So now as we look up this way, that is the airline, Middletown branch. So in that last, that's where P&W was headed. CSO had just come in, chopped their power off, and they're headed down to hitch on to their outbound train. This is a drone view of everything. Michael's, P&W coming in, CSO's outbound train with a CSX unit headed back towards West Springfield and probably Selkirk for inspection or maintenance or something. Universal Drive, the Grove Yard, and 91 is over here. Pretty much from the same spot in the air, but now just turned about 90 degrees looking east. PC Richards, obviously, this is the CSX yard office with their daytime job switching. They run 2 jobs, a day job and a night job. Mostly the night job goes out onto on the Metro North out towards Milford and once in a while Bridgeport. The daytime job the daytime job only sticks around the yard itself. Just one more photo of some passing traffic. CSX and P&W currently don't interchange anything with each other. They used to sometimes. They would interchange some high-cube boxcars that would come in down the Springfield line because those can't go out on the Northeast Corridor because they're too tall. So they used to once in a while interchange something like that, but that was a long time ago. As far as I know now, they don't do anything like that. Oops. So now, just some generic overhead shots, more for the idea of modeling. We have, there's just junk everywhere, is the easiest way to put it. Piles of soil, earth fill, other random material. The whole place kind of looks post-apocalyptic, really. Just a lot of grass, a lot of dead weeds, things like that. Many of the tracks in the CSX part of the yard are not used, as you can see. And then everything that they do use just stub ends right here. Everything they use for car storage, I should say. But there's a lot of different textures in the soil that add some interesting coloration. A lot of trailers sitting around, just random stuff. I do have a staging area similar to this, a material staging area similar to this on my layout, which we'll see in a little bit. But it's not pretty, obviously. These cars over here are, I think they were involved in a derailment in the yard, and so they just sat there for long. Those are some funny little billet flat cars. So now we're going to head down towards the Transflow facility. We're looking north here. This is back towards the yard office and Universal Drive. This is the northern half of Transflow. Nothing super crazy, just a paved area. surrounded by a fence, light poles, etc. And then we've crossed that dirt crossing you saw in the satellite view, and in this particular day, the place was almost empty, but this is where the propane cars go, to this track here. And then, actually I should go back, so the next photo, the drone is roughly over here looking west. So now we're looking down at the CSX crew switching transflow, Quinnipiac River over here, the P&W tracks are in the woods back there. The propane siding. And now we're starting to work our way down towards Sims, metal management. That's over here in the background. You can see a few cars getting loaded. In this view, the CSX job was switching Anastasio, a ton of foil cars that particular day. So they were pretty far up as they were working that siding. Needed a lot of headroom. That is Sims, of course. I do have what will be a scrapyard on my layout, but it won't look anything like that because I don't have space, and I will never have the time to attempt to make that. So that's just, I'm not even gonna try. But it's a pretty crazy facility. I-91 is through here. So I'm just panning out a little bit wider view. You can see a lot of random steel sitting around, which offers a lot of variety in terms of styrene and things that you can throw onto a layout like this. And now this is the P&W section of the yard. This is the one siding that CSX uses over here for the telephone poles. There's a car there and another one much farther down there, and just piles and piles and piles of the steel billets. So now hopping over more to the P&W side, that's the pile of Jersey barriers I mentioned earlier. I mean, hundreds of them. How or why they ended up there, who knows. But P&W is just passing through, headed down towards their end of the yard. This is that overhead walkway I mentioned earlier, the CSX part of the yard, transflow. And then just more overhead shots of them coming through. This is looking west, Quinnipiac River. And then meanwhile, this is the airline here, with the Anastasio siding next to it. Since I keep talking about them, I threw in a close-up of what the billets look like. They are, I think, 6 inches by 6 inches by 40 feet long. And then I have a few loads that I use in gondolas on my layout. Usually they are shipped in gondolas. So now getting down more towards the south end of the P&W yard, train from Middletown with ballast hoppers for the Long Island Railroad. And then just an overview of a couple of their daytime crews working. They run 2 daytime crews and I don't even know, 3 or 4 nighttime jobs now. It depends on the day. And the stone traffic to New York was seasonal, so that gets cut back quite a bit in the winter. This picture here shows, well, a lot of the junk that I just keep talking about, which you can just pretty much just throw stuff on the layout like confetti, and it, wherever it lands would fit just fine. But in here is the switch that I talked about earlier, where the track as you go south splits. And one track goes straight underneath the high grade and the other goes up and around on the high grade out toward Shoreline Junction. And now we're getting down towards the Anastasio Circle of Life facility, they call it. So it's up on this, it's up on a higher level so that the building kind of overhangs the track. and that's where they load the cars. They have at least one track mobile that they use to move cars around. You can see some of the steel coils that have been unloaded, and then some of the old conveyor cars that they used to use to ship construction debris out before about 15 years ago now, the newer ones started to be built. There are a few of these cars still here, which offers an interesting model opportunity because you can weather them and just beat the crap out of them and then build, pretty much put a forest on top of it if you want to. This is the pad that they have used for the salt in the past. And now we're looking down towards the tail end of this train is on what would be the high grade. So it passes through that grove of trees, takes the hard left, and then crosses over the airline on that bridge there. And then way off here is the Amtrak Maintenance of Way yard with the Springfield line behind it. That's NH1 on the high grade. They had gone out to work the Beldock industrial track, and then they are shoving back into the yard, crossing over the airline. We're looking back at Anastasio and the P&W section of the yard. Now this is out on the corridor itself. This is one of the bridges that crosses the Quinnipiac River, Amtrak, Shoreline East, and P&W as they go towards the Beldock and the Port of New Haven. And of course the coal towers there. Every trees here get a little bit taller, a little bit thicker, so the coal tower gets a little bit harder to see from this particular view. And now we're on the other bridge. We're not on Amtrak anymore, but this is back on the airline. The photo from 2 slides ago showed P&W on this bridge here, and this is CHFP leaving Cedar Hill, the stone train headed out towards Fresh Pond, New York, and the New York and Atlantic interchange. And it's hard to see on this screen. It looks like just a little pixel issue, but that little white spot right there is the tail of an osprey that's flying around. So we're following this train south now. This is the siding that where they transload the fertilizer. You can see a couple, or they have at least one auger in there. And I was very excited, actually. Walter came out with a modern one not too long ago, which I haven't finished painting and building it yet, but I had looked for a modern one of these, and I don't think anybody used to make them. All I could see was like an older style, more of like farm machinery type of piece of equipment that had been modeled. So I was very glad to see that someone finally came out with one of those. And now we have the CSX crew working in there. Lots of lumber, lots of other junk. It's just a lot. It's a lot to look at, and a lot to try to model. And of course the coal tower, which has a lot of vines and trees growing up it now. We have a long wall made out of tires, some other trailers and equipment just sitting here kind of rotting away. And now we're looking up at the Amtrak yard. We have the Springfield line here, and that right there is the Kravitz facility where CSX brings some tank cars. P&W headed back towards their crew trailer one afternoon. And so now we're headed back down towards Mill River interlocking. So obviously that's I-91. P&W's on the airline lead, track 1, track 2 of the Springfield line. And then we have the Northeast Corridor over here. This is the Blatchley Avenue overpass in New Haven. And then same place. Obviously, CSX is coming back from having switched to Kravitz, so they pull down all the way through the interlocking. So they have to talk to 2 different dispatchers, 2 different Amtrak dispatchers, because they are on the Springfield here, but Mill River is controlled by Amtrak Shoreline dispatchers, so it's a little bit of a chore for them to get in and out. Same overpass, but now we're looking the other way towards New Haven. Amtrak ballast extra pulling, actually I think they were shoving out of the yard, headed out towards Pine Orchard. Tilcon loads a lot of ballast for Amtrak from their quarry in North Branford. And then everything comes together right in there. And of course, we have the stunning New Haven skyline. And then a quick look at Crevitz. So the CSX job is on the Hartford Industrial, and they are switching out some of the they get some sulfuric acid in there and a bunch of other nasty stuff. Actually, so these, well, they're a little hard to see, but these storage tanks right here, whatever is in them when you go by them on the train at night, it glows. It's the color of Mountain Dew, and it's a little creepy, but it's kind of fascinating. So now we're in the Amtrak yard. This is one of their new Jeeps that they've been getting as they've been phasing out the switchers. The P&W crew trailer is over here with, there's one unit there, kind of in the shadows. Oops. And then, no, come on. And then the street crossing, which is as far north as we're going to go on this side of Cedar Hill. That's the farthest, the northernmost catenary pole that's still standing. And we have a southbound CT rail flying by. Okay, so now we're in my living room. This is, these lights are incredible. I got them last year for like $20 each at Ocean State Job Lot, and they make the sun look like it's in my apartment. It just totally changed the entire atmosphere. It was pretty dark in there before. This is the layout when they were showing me this particular unit. Aside from the view of the Springfield line right outside my window, I saw this space. It's 3 feet between this beam and the wall, and it's 15 feet long. And so I knew that was the one that I didn't even want them to show me whatever other units they were going to show me that day. I was like, no, I'm going to take this one. Oh, yes, so we got to go back. So I do have, this is just cardboard. I call it the Great Wall of Cedar Hill because I have to keep them out. So now I'll go through the yard kind of similar to Lee to how we did everything, more of like a sort of a satellite view, and then I'll get more ground level. There are some liberties taken, as with every layout, just for space. So one of the biggest things that I had to do was the Circle of Life construction debris facility is nowhere near where it actually is in real life. I have it stuffed in this corner on what would be the northwest side of everything because that's just the only place it would fit. And I also have coil cars going in and out of here. And a number of, it's really nice, those scale cranes, coil cars especially now, they have coils included in the package, plus you can buy coils from Tangent, so you can get some variety. This is going to be the scrapyard that will represent Sims. Again, I do not have space, and I didn't have the desire to try to model what it actually looks like, so just a simple scrapyard will stand in. This would be Kelly's right here if I had more space, where P&W would run in and out. Instead, I just have a simple stub track with a loading dock for paper boxcars. I have a little bit of a kink for boxcars, and I have way too many, so I needed places for them to go. So this particular spot was inspired by a CSO customer in the East Hartford yard, which obviously has nothing to do with Cedar Hill, but again, I needed a place to justify having so many, even though only 2 can fit in the siding anyway. So we're moving southward. We have the yard tracks. One project that I was hell-bent on finishing before the Northeast prototype modelers meet was getting an abandoned track in here, so we'll get a closer look at that later. We have a pile of Jersey barriers. I have one track for a transflow facility. We have the CSX, what represents the CSX yard office. I should go back for just a quick second. This track here represents the Grove Yard. So when I have an inbound train arriving, that is the inbound traffic there, similarly to how the current yard operates. I don't split things up based on P&W, CSX, because I don't have the space to, I just don't have the space to do that, and I also don't have the space for 120-car stone trains, and I don't ever want to spend that much money on like those Walters Ortner hoppers are crazy expensive anyway. So, so I just kind of call the whole thing Cedar Hill Shared Assets, kind of inspired by the Conrail Shared Assets in New Jersey that CSX and NS jointly operate, and then I can kind of get away with certain operational things and certain locomotives that I can sort of explain away by doing that. So now we have where the yard just kind of stub ends here. I have a siding for telephone pole cars, and I also bring some steel in there just because I needed a place for it to go. This track here will actually have a few piles of the billets yeah, there's another one there. So this track here is the, it's pointing the wrong way compared to the one in real life, but this is the Anastasio siding where lumber and fertilizer both go. This track here is for the steel billets. This is much more freelance because of space, and I wasn't going to try to put Mill River in here, and I don't really have an interest in modeling passenger stuff either. So I have a propane terminal because there is a lot of propane that goes into Cedar Hill. This track here, one day there will be a flat face of a building. This is a representation of what was a CSX customer in Milford out on Metro North. So again, it's a pretty big liberty I took. It's not actually in Cedar Hill, but Star Distributors in West Haven used to be very busy. They haven't gotten any cars in a year or two. But again, I need places for box cars to go. So that's another one. And then finally over here, I have in the corner a Palumbo trucking facility, which, as I mentioned earlier, is down near the Port of New Haven on the Beldock Industrial, not in Cedar Hill, but I wanted to include it. All right, so now we're more on the ground level of things. I don't model a specific year. I know a lot of people do. I just kind of keep things like sort of in the modern era. A friend of a friend was selling this Conrail, Atlas Conrail unit, and I had to buy it because when Connecticut Southern started up, they bought 6 of these units from Conrail in 1996, and the 2011 was one of them. So that went in and out of Cedar Hill all the time, went by my apartment all the time, so I had to buy it. So that loading dock, since I included it, I threw in this picture. This is East Hartford, just so you can get an idea of what inspired that. This is looking west towards Hartford itself. This is CSO, although it's a P&W unit, this is CSO switching. They have tracks on both sides, but I just wanted you to get an idea of what I'm going after with that siding. This will be Circle of Life. I have no idea how I'm going to ever attempt to model the structure, the garlic dome that I call it. One day I'll get to it, but it will be up on some styrofoam on a platform overhanging one of these tracks. The track closer to the wall will just be for car storage. And then same siding, just like in real life, I have coil cars that go in and out. So this is looking at the what in real life is the CSX part of the yard with an abandoned track, Jersey barriers, other vegetation, which I'll put a couple of trees in here because that's how it really is. For the track, what I did was I cut a lot of the ties out, and then Well, actually, I'll get back to the track in just a second. Actually, close up of the pile that I have, Jersey barriers. These are 3D printed. It's just amazing what you can buy that's 3D printed. It's changed the whole hobby. All right, so for my yard track, what I did was I cut a lot of the ties out, and then what was there, I sort of skewed some of them, and then many years ago, so I grew up on the airline in Middlefield, and many years ago, Providence and Worcester did a tie project, and right at the crossing where we live, they left a big tie pile. And so a long time ago, I went down there and I was picking little bits and pieces off of actual used ties, and just kind of thinking, oh, I might use these one day. And then many years later, I was like, as I was putting this together, I was like, wait, I remember I did that like 10 years ago or whenever it was. And so I found the bag, and it actually came out pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it, with how it made the yard track look. And I did dry brush some gray and some other different colors just to give it some more texture and make the ties look just old and used. This is the siding for the telephone poles. That actually close up of the track. There's the abandoned track, of course. Some rail. I started to put some just dead weeds and such, which will one day continue pretty much down the whole track. That's a very tedious and very painstaking process. I have a pad where locomotives sit. This is that material that you would put on steps. The name is escaping me, but your stairs up and down outside, like onto your deck.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you. For when it's slippery and icy. That's what I used, the pad, just to have the sort of correct texture. This I included just because, so CSO still has one of these old LMX, actually they have two of these old LMX B39s running around. One of them is still gray, the 8530. So one day I will renumber this, but it's not totally inaccurate for that exact number to be in Cedar Hill, because that actually became P&W 3903. So in real life, those are the same engine. But I wanted to just throw that in because it entertains the 2% of autism that I have. So I just think that's really neat. So now we're looking at the scrapyard, which one day will be vastly more detailed. Atlas came out with these Bright Future GP40s maybe last year, early this year. They've come out with a lot of really good stuff lately, which has been really nice. So now we're just meandering southward. I just included a couple of freight car pictures. I think this is an old roundhouse kit. And then so is that one, and I used styrene to add the supports along the side. These are strips of yellow electrical tape. And then the load is not, it's the inside of it, it's just a piece of styrofoam where the wood is glued around the outside, and then just to fill in like these spaces here, I just dab holes into the styrofoam so that there weren't holes. So the whole thing is not the wooden skewers. So deep at the end of one of the stub tracks in Cedar Hill is this old Conrail flat car that was one time used as some kind of a loading ramp. So I had to include something like that. And I just beat it up as much as I could, dry brushed the deck, and then just used some other material to kind of cover up one end of it, ripped one of the trucks off, and then obviously put some weeds and things like that. So I'll detail some more of that one day, but it looks pretty okay for now, I think. So now we're looking more southward towards a lot more of the Anastasio type transloading area, billets, fertilizer, lumber. And obviously it looks nothing like all of this, the current, what it currently looks like with all the stuff everywhere. That will come with time. And then down at the other end of everything with Palumbo trucking and some of the other more freelance stuff that I included. The billets are just styrene. And then one other detail that I've noticed sometimes is they will paint colors on the ends of the steel. I don't know why or what it represents, but I've seen many different colors and even some color combinations like red and white or something like that. So I added that detail in as well. There we are in the Star Distributor siding. And then just to get an idea of why I included that Palumbo facility, this is in New Haven, near the port of New Haven. That's what used to be the Q Bridge overhead. It's the Pearl Harbor Memorial something or other bridge now. They have 2 tracks in there. It's a very busy place. They get switched pretty much every night by P&W. And then Route 1 and the Tomlinson Bridge are over here off on the right. And P&W does go over the Tomlinson Bridge down closer to the port with steel. And there's a new safety clean facility that ships out, I think, recycled oil or something. So that's what I'm going for there. Some of the sand that I use may or may not actually have been picked up on the ground at Palumbo. It is authentic. And that's it. Any questions? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Good job. Okay, the layout tour slips over there. Got them. So the layout tour slips, Don's got them, and they're over there on the table. Well, that's it. Thank you for coming. Have a good day. Go out and see the layout. I believe it's in what, East Haddam, right? East Haddam. All right.
Here's what I tell, like, what's the big out part of it?